Crafty Co. Today we are going to make a crocheted rainbow, and this can be used for many things. You can sew it onto a bag, onto a cushion, or as with this one, I've used double strand and I've turned it into a double-sided wall hanging. Now I know probably in lockdown, as they are here, supplies are hard to come by, so it doesn't really matter what colour rainbow you have. We've got a blue one here, but today I'm going to make one with rainbow colours. So let's get started. You're going to need some oddments, and they really are small pieces of wool that you do need. They don't take up much. So we're going to be working with cotton, but you can use any yarn that you want. Just be mindful of what hook that you're going to be using with the yarn. If you're using a double crochet, a 4mm and less is advisable. The larger the hook, the more open weave the stitch is going to be, and so it's going to get gaps between. This one I used a 3mm hook, and the gaps are quite small. First thing we're going to do is start with our violet colour. So we're going to be working from the bottom upwards. You're going to need a suitable crochet hook. As I say, I'm using a 3mm. You can use any you want, and if you want to double up your yarn, then probably a 5mm would be the best to use for that, because it would give you a nice close weave. I do apologise, I do have a dog in the background, so if you hear a bit of flicking, it's him and not me. Taking the colour that you're going to do for the bottom of the rainbow, create a slip knot. And for those of you that haven't done one before, the yarn that is attached to the ball is called the working yarn. So take the end and then place it over your working yarn, and that will create a loop. You reach through the loop and you pull the working yarn, and it will create a slip knot for you. Insert your hook and pull the slip knot closed. So we're going to create a chain of 22. We've got our slip knot here, and we don't count that when we chain. So we just chain 22, and to work a chain, yarn over the hook and pull the loop over, and that is a chain. So we're going to do 22 of those. Yarn over hook, pull the loop over. So that's 3, 4, 5, and just keep going until you've got 22. So we've now done our 22 chains. It's a good idea if you are just starting out and are not really used to working with foundation chains, just do a few more than you need. It's always easier to unpick the last few if you have them left over, rather than to add some on. So now what we're going to do is we're going to create our first stitch. And to do that, we're going to be working in UK trebles or US double crochet. So we need to insert our hook into the 4th chain, not including, so we don't include the loop that is on the hook. So we count back 1, 2, 3, 4, and we're going to be doing our first stitch in this 4th chain. Now we're working in UK trebles, so we need to yarn over, insert hook, yarn over and pull through, and you're left with 3 loops on the hook. Yarn over, pull the first 2, yarn over and pull the remaining 2. Now although we've only worked 1 treble, it's actually created 2 stitches, because the chains that we missed have created the first. So we work back along this chain and we work a total of 20 trebles. So I'll meet you at the end when we've completed our 20 trebles. So now we've completed our 20 treble stitches, and you'll see that we haven't gone into the slip knot at the beginning. and that's what you want to do. We don't want to go into that one because it may unravel itself. And all we do is cut off the yarn and pull through. For the moment, don't worry about sewing any ends, we'll do that all at the end. So that's our first row complete. Now at the moment it doesn't actually look much like a rainbow because there's no curve in it, and it's what we do next with the rows that's going to create that curve. And you'll see, actually I'll show you from the back here, you'll see that the curve starts just a little way up. So for every single row, the first 4 stitches we don't touch, we don't do anything to, we just work 4 stitches at the front and at the end of the row. And then all we're going to do is the increases in the centre section, and that's what gives it the curve. So we've got our first one, and now we're going to put our indigo. And there's 2 ways that you can start the row. To work with trebles, we would normally start with a 3 chain. I like to work with a dummy treble because it gives a nice edge. It's not important if you're putting a cloud on, but if you're having the edges without a cloud, if you're just going to have a rainbow, it's really nice to have these edges looking like trebles rather than being able to see a chain 3 at the front. And it's very, very simple to do. A top tip is to locate the second stitch. When I work in trebles, I like to go into the little hole at the top of each stitch. I don't go in the spaces, this is where I like to work. So you can see that this one here actually belongs to this second stitch. So now we need to locate the first one, which is just there. So that's where we'll be working the dummy treble into. And to work a dummy treble, we wrap the yarn around 3 times before we insert it into that space. So we know where it is. This one here is a second stitch. We're just going to go to the right of it, yarn over, pull through. We've got 4, don't take any notice of the end one, but we do have 4 loops on the hook. So we yarn over and we pull off the first 2. Make sure that you're keeping hold of this tail, because if you let go of it, it's just going to unravel. And then we yarn over and take off the next 2. So we've actually created a treble stitch. So we don't need this piece of yarn anymore, so just let that one go. And now we go into the next stitch with a treble. And the 3rd stitch, and we do 1 more treble. Now these 4 trebles are the same on every single row that we're going to do. We're now going to do our increases, which will give the rainbow the curve. So over the next 12 stitches, we've got 16 left, so over the next 12 we're going to do an increase in each of those stitches. And an increase simply means you go in the same stitch more than once. You can go in there once, twice, 3 times, depending how much you need to increase, but we're going to, I do apologise, he's having a scratch. We're going to increase in there 1 stitch. So we do 1 treble, and then we're going to increase, so we go back into that same stitch again. So we've made 1 increase in that stitch. We now do that for 12 of them, so we've already done 1, so we do it for 11 more. And as I say, an increase is just going into the same stitch twice. So that's 2, 3. So we'll continue along until we've done 12. So we've now done our 12 increases, and we will have 4 stitches left. So we work 1 treble into each of those 4 stitches. Now the end one, you'll notice it doesn't look like a stitch because it's where we broke off the previous colour. So if you just pull that down, and then it creates that little hole that we're looking for. And then we just cut the yarn and pull through. So as you can see, by increasing into the same stitch, we've now forced that bottom row into a curve, and that's how we create the rainbow. We're now going to add the next colour, which is blue, and this and the following rows are all going to be worked with a sequence around the stitches in the curve. We're going to still do 4 trebles either side, but then we're going to do 6 sequences around this curve. And to do that, we're going to create the dummy treble again. So wind your yarn round your hook 3 times and locate the stitch. Remember, it's easier to locate the second stitch first, and then we can enter the hook into that first stitch. Yarn over, pull through, yarn over, pull through the first 2, remember keeping hold of the tail, yarn over, pull through the second, and we can now release it because we've now formed that dummy treble. So we do our 4 trebles down this side, now we're going to work 6 sequences around this curve, and each sequence is going to be increase in the first stitch, treble, 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 and that completes one sequence. So I'll do the first one and show you. So we do increase in the first stitch, and as I say, increase is just working in the same stitch more than once, so we're going to do 1 increase in that first stitch, and then we're going to do 1 treble into the next 3 stitches. So that's our first sequence, which was an increased stitch, treble, 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 and we just do that sequence a further 5 times along this curve, and I shall meet you at the end. So we've now done the sequence a further 5 times, and we have the 4 stitches left down the side, so we just complete 1 treble into each of those 4 stitches. And remember that last one, you may just need to pull the end to create the hole to get the 4th one in. And then we cut off the yarn and pull through. So we've now completed our 3rd colour. And don't worry about these little ends here. You can see that as I'm pulling them, it's securing the ends and making them much neater, and we'll sew those in at the end. We're now going to add our green. So remember, we're going to do our dummy treble at the beginning. Remember to locate the second stitch and work backwards to that first one. Yarn over, pull through, yarn over the first 2 and yarn over the second 2, and then you can let that go. And then we work, as always, our 4 trebles. So that's the 2nd, 3rd and the 4th. We're now going to be working our sequence around the curve, and the secret to getting a curve in the rainbow is where you do your increases in the sequence. We increased at the beginning of each of the 6 sequences in the previous round, so now we want to increase into the centre of the sequence, and that will stop the rainbow taking on a hexagonal shape, and it will keep it nice and round. So the sequence for this row is treble, treble, and then we're going to work our increase stitch. So we're going to work 2 trebles into the next stitch, into that same space. And then we're going to do 2 more trebles, 1 in each of the next 2 stitches. So that's our sequence for this row. It's treble, treble, increase, treble, treble, and that turns 5 stitches into 6, and we're going to do that for a further 5 times along that curve, and then I shall meet you at the end. So now we've worked our 6 sequences, and we are now left with the 4 trebles, and as always we just do 1 treble in each of the stitches. Cut your yarn and pull through. So we're just going to continue, and the next one is going to be using yellow. I'm going to do the dummy treble at the beginning. And work the 4 trebles at the beginning, as we have with all the other rows. So now we're going to do the sequence for this 5th row. And as we did the increase in the centre of the sequence on the previous row, we're now going to revert back to doing it at the beginning of the sequence. So we do our increase stitch at the beginning. So we do 2 trebles into the same stitch, and then we work 5 trebles into each of the next 5 stitches. So 1 in each of the next 5. And that is the first sequence completed. It was an increase in the first stitch and 5 trebles, 1 in each of the following 5 stitches. So you repeat the sequence 5 times more, and I'll meet you back at the end. So now we've completed the sequences along this row, we're going to just do the 4 trebles at the end. So 1 treble into each stitch. So we cut the yarn and pull through to complete the 5th row. You can of course do as many rows as you like. You don't have to do the full 7, you can just do 3, you can do 5. Odd numbers do tend to work better, but we're going to do the orange now, the 6th row. We're going to do the dummy treble at the beginning. And then following 3 trebles, 1 in each, to finish the 4 trebles along that first side. So we've now completed our 4 trebles, and we're going to work the sequence around the curve. So we did the sequence at the beginning of the previous row, so we're now going to do it in the middle of this sequence. We're going to do the increase in the middle. So this time you work 3 trebles, so 1 in each of the first 3 stitches of this sequence, and then we're going to do our increase stitch in the next. So we do 2 trebles into the same space, and then we work 3 more trebles, 1 in each of the next 3. So that means that we have our increase in the centre of the sequence. So the sequence for this row is treble, 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 increase into the next stitch, treble, treble, treble. So we'll work that sequence 5 times more, and I'll see you at the end. We've done our 6 sequences, and now we have our 4 trebles left, so we just work 1 treble into each of those 4 stitches. Cut the yarn and pull through. So we've now worked 6 of the 7 colours of our rainbow, so we're just going to add the final red on the outside. So remember, we're locating that second stitch and working to the right of it, so we know that we're in the right stitch. And we work 4 stitches up the side, so we've already done 1, that's 2, 3, and 4. And remember, on the orange segment we did the increase in the centre of the sequence, so now for this final round we're going to do it at the beginning. So we work an increase stitch, so that's 2 stitches in the same space, and then we work 7 trebles, 1 treble into each of the next 7. The sequence for this final round is increase into the first stitch and then 1 treble into the next, each of the next 7 stitches. So continue that 5 times more, and I'll meet you at the end. So we've now completed our 6 sequences, and we've got our last 4 stitches, so we work 1 treble into each of the 4 stitches. Cut off the yarn and pull through, and your rainbow is now complete. All you need to do now is just sew in these ends, and I would turn it so that you've got the wrong side facing, and just weave them back in, secure them first and then weave them back in and out. And then you can, if you want to, you can add a cloud to your rainbow, and you will find the tutorial for the cloud over on the YouTube channel, or you can just leave it with nothing on the end, or you can add some pom-poms, or as I say, you can make two and you can sew them together and stuff them lightly so that you can make a nice wall hanging. But this one is using double thickness and a 5mm hook. So I hope you've enjoyed the tutorial, and if you have any questions, just ask. See you later. Bye.